Hey, what's going on out there, YouTube family? This is Samuel Legge here representing Team JVS. I'm back here again for another movie review. The name of this movie is called The Devil All the Time. This is a Netflix exclusive feature film. It is about 2 hours and 18 minutes long. Synopsis reads, the sinister characters converge around a young man devoted to protecting those he loves in a post-war backwoods town teeming with corruption and brutality. Now, the thing about this movie, when I first saw the first trailer, that enticed me so much was some very strong leads in this. You got Robert Pattinson playing the role of Preston, who's a preacher at a certain point in the movie. Tom Holland playing the role of Arvin Russell, who was basically the son to Bill Skarsgård. If you don't know who Bill Skarsgård is, look at it, you will know. He's an amazing actor. He plays the role of the dad, Willard Russell. You got Sebastian Stan, basically the sheriff of the town. And you also have Jason Clarke, who plays the role of Carl Henderson, who has a very interesting role in connection with another character named Sandy. So in terms of my thoughts and process of I'm gonna try to break down things that I liked and things I didn't like, and then some things I felt like a little indifferent towards, because one of the things that's the focal points of this is that there's a lot of religious undertones and presentation of religious undertones of people's perceptions of belief, not necessarily anything hopeful, not necessarily anything that a benefit from like belief, but more so a stigma slash a loose grab of religious people that take it a terrible and a negative way on totally different circumstances. It opens with Bill Skarsgård's character Willard in the war, and one of the first things that he sees is something horrendous, and it is something that messes him up emotionally and mentally from even wanting to even go into the church. And then when he does go into the church, he sees some very strange and sycophantic things, and then that's where things start to kind of branch out, because you have different characters that you know platform themselves saying that they have this high belief and they have this understanding of this, and their understanding of faith is what's going to allow them to do certain things. Like one of the first things that you see in the trailers is somebody like taking like a whole thing of spiders and just dumping it on the head. I was like, yo, this isn't this isn't faith. Matter of fact, God's not an author of confusion. So what this is very blasphemous, is very carnal, and is very sick. And you start to really pull apart a lot of people that claim to have a certain kind of belief, and instead they are either one side of the spectrum where they are perverted and corrupt, or two, they are being misled or misguided, and it is putting them on a downward spiral, as opposed to accountability, as opposed to understanding and comprehension. I just want to make sure I let you guys know my indiscrepancies about certain aspects of the film, because I am a believer, and I do have a very faith-based background, and so it's kind of like I was watching some of these things and I was like, this is wrong, this is perverted, this is taking the word of God and using it to personal gain, or to someone's detriment, to propagate somebody else up in a certain way. And it's really sad. There's so many different levels of this that are very sad, because the people that are being affected by it are technically decent and good-hearted people. But I don't want to spoil too much of this, because again, like I said, Bill Skarsgård's character in the very beginning of the movie, it surrounds him kind of coming back, and in the trailers I was led to believe in the trailers that he was just insane. There was something wrong with him, but there wasn't really anything wrong with him. It was just the surroundings of the settings that he was in, and his willingness to try to believe something that it was evident at the time that there was no coming back from what he wanted to change. And I'm saying that without spoiling anything, but again, a large part of people's indifference, a large part of the things that happen are built off of people wanting to believe that something is real for them, not necessarily is gonna happen. And it's really sad, man. I think that Bill Skarsgård he did some really good scenes. There's one specific scene where he was kind of like kneeling and just kind of praying, and another scene where he's with the son in the car and he just like, watch this, and I was like, oh my gosh, like it was very rough. I also give acknowledgement to Sebastian Stan. Sebastian Stan, he actually gained some weight for this specific role of the sheriff, and the sheriff is not the nicest of people, not the best of people either, and it was just weird because certain characters in this, like, they rub you like sandpaper. Like he was one of those characters I was like, he's just slimy. Like he doesn't feel like a good person. Like there's nothing good about who he actually is, and you feel it. And I think that from a performance-driven standpoint, he nailed that home. Whereas like Bill Skarsgård's Willard's character, it was kind of like you hate to see these things happen to him. You hate to see the spiral that's about to happen, and you hate to see also how that's going to affect Tom Holland's character later on in his life, because a lot of the life lessons he's going to learn from his dad is going to put him on a certain path, and that path, good or bad, is going to platform certain things that are going to be set in motion, which, to the movie's credit, there's a lot of different arcs that are going on, different stories that are happening, where you have one character that's like, you know, doing his own thing. You have another character that, like I said, Jason Clarke's character with his girlfriend, you find out that they are terrible people, and what they're proposing to do and what these pictures that they're trying to present is some sick stuff. Like their scenes probably have some of the most goriest parts of this. It's actually a very gory and death-filled film. So just be forewarned of that. But in my interpretation of Jason Clarke's performance, I think it was okay. I don't think it was his best at all. Nor do I think that the actress that was working with him had that many good emotional based scenes. But it did tie in later on down the line, and I guess come to some form of a payoff. But it was kind of like, the weird thing about it, and this is probably my biggest negative, is that there's a person that's narrating this the whole entire time, going from everybody's perspective, what's happening and what's not happening, and you never, this is kind of a spoiler, you never get the understanding of how or why this person knows everything is going on. It kind of just makes it feel weird. Like instead of it just organically kind of happening and certain events starting to happen, you see these characters kind of intertwined, kind of like a Tarantino kind of situation, is being told from a third person perspective, even though there's nobody that's actually there. So it's like, who's actually saying this? I mean, the voice was fine. The voice actor doing it was fine, but it was just the way it was actually presented was not. Then you got Robert Pattinson's character, the preacher. And again, sandpaper. He played his role. Like every single scene where he was like preaching legit, like he played those scenes, but he was one of the worst kinds of people, because he's one of those people that use the word of God, you know, to his own gain, and in the worst kind of ways. Like he does, like Rob Pattinson as a character, like this is a very antagonistic role. Like it's nothing about his character that I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. Like, no. Like it doesn't. I probably if you are excited for him to be Batman, this might not be the movie for you to see. Now, his performance wise, he can act. He can act, but it's like his character he's not that. He's the complete opposite of what Batman stands for, to be quite honest with you. And it was really hard to actually watch some of the things that he was doing, or what he was willing to do, and some of the verbalizations that he said. Shouts out to Haley Bennett, played the role of Charlotte Russell. She played Tom Holland's mother. I think she did some pretty decent scenes in the very beginning. But there was something that happened early on to character named Susie that was really rough. And I think that the actress that played that role, she did an amazing job with her performance. Now let's get down to Tom Holland. How does he do? Like, does he nail this? I think he does an amazing job. I think that this is the most serious role that he has taken since, what was that movie where he was a young kid and the hurricane happened? I can't remember the name of that movie. But this is absolutely the most serious that I've ever seen Tom Holland do. He does a multitude of different ranges of emotion. Like, he plays the anger side of it pretty well. It's weird though, because his anger in this is very different than what I was predicting it was going to be. I thought it was going to be like an explosion of anger, but it was very subtle. And a part of that has to do with the way that he was actually brought up. And also what he was conditioned, and also what he actually believes. His character, in certain aspects, I was like, is very interesting. The metamorphosis of his perspective of belief that goes through the entire movie. But at the same time, nobody in this movie is innocent at all, including him. Like, he does some terrible, terrible things as well. It's just you question, is everything that he did or going to do or in the motion of doing, is it justified? And that's where things start to get very cloudy in terms of the perception of what this film is trying to say. Like, what is the resolve? What is the answer behind all of this? Because from looking at it from a believer standpoint, it is not a gratifying or uplifting or enthusiastically understood guidance through the way that this movie is trying to portray. Again, I think that the acting is pretty good. I think that certain people, you know, they kind of just half do it. I think Sebastian Stan dedicated his body to it, and I think he definitely played the role pretty well. Like, it was actually really good. I mean, I'm honest with you. Robert Pattinson, he played his role. Tom Holland, again, I think he did really good. I think he can do better. I really do think that he has some other stuff that I can't wait to see what Tom Holland really does later on down the line. Jason Clarke was not his best. I think he could have gotten anybody for that role, and I don't know that his arc necessarily mattered in the grand scheme of where things went. Bill Skarsgård, I would have loved to see more scenes with him. I loved the scenes that I got with him. So the acting was there. As far as the cinematography, I think cinematography, the shots were actually well done. They had a lot of good wide shots that, you know, captured some really messed up, sick moments where you kind of was like, oh my gosh. As far as the composition, as far as the audio and the score was definitely reminiscent of the setting. The location is supposed to be taking place in West Virginia, even though they actually shot this in Alabama for the most part. But I think it worked for the theme of this. So as far as actual structure film, like, all the pieces were technically there. It's just not a movie that I'd want to see more than once. And I'm curious to see if this went into award contention. My bet it would probably be on Sebastian Stan or either Robert Pattinson's role. Probably more guided to Sebastian Stan. But it's like, I don't know. It kind of felt like a little bit of a what's a good not the Italian Job. Scorsese. Oh my gosh, how am I forgetting this? Hold on. I am not gonna forget this. No, I know it. Because it's on the tip of my tongue, and it really does feel like, as far as the way they juggle characters, it really does. The Departed, it does feel like they take it from all these different kind of points, but it doesn't give you this glorifying payoff. Matter of fact, actually, a lot of things just are thrown out, and the narrator paints this picture of perception that some instances when people die, it's just like it didn't even have to happen, and the person's motivations weren't even there, and it's I don't know, it's not a hopeful film. It's not an uplifting one, and it shows the worst sides of humanity on different levels. And also the different sides of people using faith and belief and understanding in the most carnal, heinous, and wicked ways possible. So, and even from a comprehensional standpoint. So, what do I give this? Man, I want to give it an 8 out of 10, but I'm gonna leave it at like a 7. 7 out of 10, just because I really don't know what the movie was trying to say, and I don't know what was the point of the narrator from a guiding perspective, other than to make me feel like, oh well, this is what this person's mind, but it just didn't mesh with the way that the actual story was actually flowing. Yeah, so that's what I think about the movie. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this review. I'll talk to you guys a little later on. Keep it locked. JVS, we ain't gonna stop. Peace, guys.